What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Restoration Rundown Podcast, the podcast that's dedicated to you, the restoration business owner. Very excited about today because I have talked to multiple restoration companies across the United States. If I had to take a guess, over 300 in the time that I've been doing this. And one thing that I kind of get tired of hearing about are these contractors that are unhappy. They're not getting leads, rightfully so. They spend a lot of time and money on this, but they're wasting a lot of time and money on digital marketing, and they're just not getting a consistent flow of leads. So we've kind of boiled this down into the top couple things. And today we're specifically going to talk about those guys out there that are in the set it and forget it mentality. And I understand, hey, I'm hiring a guy who's an expert. It's going to come in-house. He's going to build me a website. He's going to get me a ton of leads. We're going to get rich, right? And then you kind of just hire the guy and you really have no idea what he's doing, and you're just listening to him and you're just going about your business. You're serving your clients. You're trying to generate your own leads through referrals and networking and whatnot, and you're not getting anything out of it, right? Or you're hiring an agency and you're kind of treating it the same way. Yeah, we're going to hire you. This is the job that you're going to do. And then you're not really getting anything out of that either. So if you find yourself in that position over time, consistently, where you're bouncing around from company to company, you've hired every single person you possibly could to bring them in-house for marketing, and you're just spinning your wheels and you're sick of spending and wasting money and time on it, then this video and this podcast episode is just for you. So let's dive right into it. So one of the biggest things that we see, the big problem, is these guys that are just like I just mentioned, that are set it and forget it. Basically, your head is in the sand. I understand marketing is complicated, but digital marketing is super complicated. You've got, between the over 200 ranking factors on search engines to get your business on page one, to these predatory companies that are going out there and they're selling you on these packages that really aren't going to get you anything. And you've heard them all, right? You've got the guys calling you, for $300 a month, we'll get you leads. And or you're paying for leads on 33 Mile or Home Advisors or Angie's List, and they're constantly coming at you and saying, give us more money. We need more time. The big thing that we see is that you guys got to educate yourselves, right? This is the reason we're doing the Restoration Rundown podcast. This is the reason I wrote my book, The No BS Guide to Internet Marketing for Restoration Contractors. This is the reason my team spends countless hours every single week giving out free information, free video analyses to teach you guys at least what you should be looking for when you are hiring somebody to do this work, right? So education is a fundamental aspect of my company. Every single employee here is an education and a value first, because if you don't understand what's happening, then you're going to have a hard time celebrating the wins. You're also going to have a hard time understanding what's keeping you from actually getting those leads. So I'm not here to say that every agency is predatory and every single person doesn't know what they're doing. That's not true. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's because you, the business owner, aren't holding yourself or your teams accountable for the work being done. And the best way to do that is to educate yourself. Okay? If you're a water damage restoration contractor and you know nothing about water damage remediation or floods, or maybe you move to a new state and there's some little intricacies with the laws and stuff, it's almost like hiring a company or hiring an employee that supposedly knows all of that and just setting them out off on their own and hoping in a couple months they haven't ruined a bunch of jobs and got you a bunch of bad reviews. And then when that does happen, you kind of blame them and you kick them out the door. When a better situation would be to be the expert on water damage. You bring somebody on, you know what to look for, and you can tell within 10 minutes if that person knows what the hell they're talking about or not. And you got to kind of treat digital marketing in the same way. Now, you don't need to become an expert. I implore you to learn as much as you can about it. But you should know enough to be dangerous, meaning you should understand how long it takes to rank a business online, right? Or within reason, because nobody could really tell you with certainty how long it'll take. You should understand how pay-per-click works. You should understand the importance of the Google business profile and the social media posting and all the stuff we talk about on this podcast all the time. You should have at least a fundamental understanding of how those things translate into leads for your business. All right. So education is number one. There's so much free information out there outside of what we put out. We've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. I've got, a handful of podcast episodes, and we're going to be continuously putting these out. So there's no excuse. So as a business owner, no matter how big your business is, either you need to understand what's happening and how it translates, or you need to have somebody on your team that you trust that can monitor all of this. So a couple things that you can do. My suggestion outside of the education aspect of it is, since it does take time to rank a business, and it does take time for this marketing to really hit and get that fire going and get that consistency of leads coming in, what you need to be doing is setting some KPIs or a key performance indicator, right? Some incremental goal that your teams need to be hitting to make sure you're on the right track. Now, while you're not going to get number one placement for water damage restoration in your city right off the bat, and if you're doing it right, you should get there eventually, but you should be monitoring those keywords incrementally, seeing if the low-hanging fruit is popping on the first page of Google, watching your competition, making sure that you're checking your traffic and you've got your fingers on the pulse of your Google Analytics and your keywords and that they're moving. If you don't have call tracking in your business, having whoever answers the phone ask every single person how they heard about your company is a really easy thing that's in your control that you can do to then take that information of the calls. So let's say your person answering the phone, or if it's you, every call that comes in at the end of the month, you say, well, I had 9 mold removal calls. They said they found me on Google. I had 4 water damage restoration projects, or at least leads that came in. They said they found me on Google. I had a mold assessment and they got me off of Facebook, or somebody recommended me in a Facebook post. That information right there will tell you if you're on the right track or not. Because if you have been doing that consistently for a few months, it should be growing, right? Or at least you should, calls are hard to say because there's going to be some months that, you can't control property damage, right? You can't, guys down here that do storm damage restoration, in South Florida, you can't control when the hurricane's going to be there. So at the end of the day, it's really about that placement and the visibility, because when a hurricane does hit, you want to make sure you have that visibility on page 1 to be able to get that work. So we deal with that a lot. But the bigger theme here is you got to have your fingers on the pulse of what's happening so you can hold your teams accountable. All right. So again, a few things you can do is watching keywords, watching the traffic come to your website, logging and tracking the phone calls. But at the end of the day, you need to track that data and measure how it translates to what the big picture is going to be. So if you have a marketing team, and again, you're sick of hearing those excuses, oh, we need more time. And you already know, like, all right, well, we've been watching these keywords are bumping up a little bit. We're present in these marketing meetings that they should be holding monthly. We're watching Google Analytics. We are tracking our phone calls. You'll know that you're on the right track. All right. And speaking of being present, so a marketing agency or your in-house team, you need to be present. You have to understand that you're not hiring. You got to get out of the mentality that you're hiring a service, because then you're going to get into that situation like I mentioned before where you're setting it and forgetting it. You're burying your head in the sand. And then a couple months goes down the road, you've spent 20 grand and you got nothing to show for it. At least you don't know if you have something to show for it if you're not tracking things properly. Then you're kicking these people out the door. Well, sometimes you're kicking people out the door that have actually been doing a good job. And then you hire another agency up there, then you give them a little bit of time and a short leash, and then you're kicking them out the door. And, if you're not tracking this stuff properly, if you have no idea where your leads are coming from, then how can you realistically hold anybody accountable? And how could you fire a marketing company or an in-house team when you're not even tracking your numbers? So it's almost like, for your business, you're tracking your profit and loss, right? Or you should be. If you're not tracking your profit and loss, and at the end of the year, you're just watching your bank account, like, I got less money than I did at the beginning of the year. Well, something's going on. I'm going to fire all my crews. Nobody's doing their work. I'm wasting money. Well, that's not the case. If you're tracking your profit and loss, you know how much money's coming in, where that money goes out to, and how much money's left over at the end of the month. Marketing has to be looked at the same way, just as important, because not only the financial investment that you're making into marketing, but it's a time thing. Time is money. And sometimes, and we've seen this quite a bit, guys, when we do their video analysis and just checking them out, we do them for free all the time. We're like, hey man, you're actually in pretty good shape, but the last time you blogged was like 3 months ago. What happened? And we find out that, well, we didn't think the marketing company was doing good. We didn't really know. And then we fired them. And then we kind of dig a little deeper and said, well, what happened there? Comes to find out the owner of the business was never tracking leads. They weren't understanding anything. They just looked in their head and said, I'm spending $2,000 a month and I just don't see anything. And I've even had, we are always in continuing education here. We talk to other agencies, and that's a big problem. It's non-present owners. It's guys that are just treating you like a service, treating their marketing team in-house like a service when it's not. This is a partnership. So you need to be available on at least a monthly call to look at your analytics, have somebody that is an expert on that, explain to you what those analytics mean. Because if you do have a down month in traffic, sometimes you can take a look at Google Trends and just say, hey, look, there is zero volume for search for mold remediation right now. We're out of season for that. Well, but look at this other stuff, like check your water damage leads and check your burst pipes or stuff like that, or your flood leads or storm damage or fire. So there's always ebbs and flows. But ask questions. Part of educating yourself is asking the right questions and understanding and not coming at this situation like I gotcha. I'm not getting leads. What's going on? Answer the questions. That's a very toxic environment, toxic way to run a company. And you got to get that out of that mentality. If you're not already having monthly marketing check-ins, do it. Set up a monthly marketing meeting. Here at Ironclad, we're monthly. It is a by the book monthly. We got to have it. We will hound you down and get that monthly call, or if it's an email, whatever works better for our clients. Some of our clients jump on Zoom calls and we walk them through this. But it's very important up front to just understand what these people are doing. If you don't understand the work that's being done and why it's being done more so, and all the little ins and outs of it, then you really can't hold anybody accountable because you have no idea whether or not they're doing a good job or not. Okay, so this is a huge area. We're spending a lot of time on it, but it is one of the biggest things we see when we're doing these video analyses and we're talking to companies across the United States. It's big. So understand what's happening. There's zero excuse for you as a restoration business owner or any type of business owner at all that has used multiple marketing agencies. And the number one question is said, what happened? Well, we don't know what they were actually even doing. That's crazy to me. You need to understand what they were doing. Oh, well, they were optimizing our website so we can get higher on Google, on search engines. Well, were they doing that? Well, we don't know. We weren't looking at our keywords. We didn't understand. We just knew the phone wasn't ringing. Okay. Are you doing call tracking? How do you know the phone's not ringing? We've had clients in the past that have told us that same thing. And when we go ahead and we try to kind of dig in a little bit more to see what's going on, we're finding out they're not answering the phone during business hours. They don't have a voicemail set up. So when you're looking at the end of the month saying about, I spent all this money on marketing and you're not answering the phone, you're not checking messages, you're not returning calls, whose fault is it really? Accountability is number one. Education is going to be right there next to that. All right. So let's say you have all this stuff into play. You have a good team. You're solid. You educated yourself. You understand what they're doing. You understand, at least from a surface level, what the point of doing SEO, what the point of, how your pay-per-click's going. You've kind of nailed down your cost per clicks and you've got that optimized. You're consistent on social media. You are, your agency's blogging regularly. You have a good converting website. The calls, your call tracking's implemented, you're tracking data, you're sitting in these monthly meetings, you're doing everything you need to be doing as a business owner. Now it comes into the second biggest thing that we see as a problem is that you might not have partnered with the right agency. I say this a lot because we see it a lot. There are a lot of predatory companies out there, or there's a lot of companies that might be doing stuff that is very, one size fits all. They're doing some semblance of digital marketing, but they're really not doing what you really need to do. Sometimes that's their fault, but sometimes that's also your fault. If you're constantly price shopping, you're going to get into situations like that. If you have a company, and there's a couple big ones out there that call you up and they're, send you 4 different packages. One's $5,000 a month, one's $2,000 a month, one's $350 a month. That's kind of a big disparity. And let's say you've gotten a couple quotes from a couple other people and they're all consistently around $1,000 to $3,000 a month for their services. Well, there's a reason that you're spending $350 a month. So as a business owner, would you rather spend $350 a month on something you're not going to get anything out of? Or would you rather spend $1,000 a month and understand that, this is probably a little closer to what the industry needs to get you where you need to go? So, whatever the case may be, if you're still not hitting those KPIs that you set, just say like a key performance indicator is, hey, we want at least some keyword movement and we want to see at least a little increase in our organic traffic. And you're not hitting those after 3+ months with an agency or your in-house team, Now it's time to start digging a little deeper and take a look at your strategy, at their strategy more so. What are they doing? Right? Yeah, they're doing SEO, but are they doing SEO? SEO is such an ambiguous term, and there's so many ins and outs to it that you got to make sure at least they're doing the fundamentals. Do you have the proper on-page optimization done on your site? If they say yes, then ask them to show it to you. It's very easy. There's free Google Chrome extensions that you can click on your website, and it'll tell you. If you at least have like the basics in order, like your meta tags, your description is right, your title, and all your H1 tags are at least good, and it'll tell you if it's optimal or not, right? So that's an easy way. Make them show it to you. If they're good, they should be transparent. We're transparent. I have no problem showing you anything because I'm very confident in my team and I'm confident in our strategy. And I'm confident in our company that we take the necessary moves, we educate ourselves on different changes to make sure that we stay ahead of things as much as we possibly can. So it's important, especially when you're talking about this becoming a partnership, right? We're not a service. We provide a service, but we're partnering with companies, and your agency should be partnering with you to help you achieve your goal and help you eliminate any issues that exist that you've dealt with in the past, okay? So strategy might be an issue. If they're not doing the fundamentals, they don't have the on-page done, they're not blogging on a regular basis, they're not putting up these city pages, they're not adding keywords, or they're not showing you a real report, like a real snapshot of Google Analytics, ask them for it. All right, so that's step one, because you might be surprised and find out that they are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and that your competition is just doing more. And now it's time to revisit and make sure that the agency that you're partnered with is capable of taking you to that next level, or they at least have the answers and say, well, here's the problem, but this is what we talk about and we want you to do. Whether that's, hey, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive. You might have to spend a little bit more money. All right. Review your keyword rankings. Okay. Something you can ask them for on the every month we provide it to our clients. Take a look. You can see where they were, where they're going, what new keywords were added to your portfolio. Check your Google Analytics. Look at a snapshot of your organic traffic over time. Like you can set times on your Google Analytics and see, well, here's where I was before I started with this company, and here's where I am now. You can look at it year over year as long as you've ever had Google Analytics installed on your website. So take a look at that. Track your calls. If you are tracking phone calls, just see where it's at. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions, okay? You can have down months. We have clients that have down months, but in that down month, there should be KPIs that you hit that you can celebrate. Hey, yeah, I know the calls were down this month, but take a look. We just had 25 keywords move up to page 1. And that's huge because eventually this isn't a direct response type of marketing, right? And you know that. Digital marketing is not direct response. It's like planting a tree. So down the road, that tree is going to grow in a shade, or if it's a fruit tree, it's going to bear fruit. But you're not throwing a seed in the ground and standing there and kicking the dirt around and wondering why the hell it's not giving you an orange or a piece of fruit, or it's not providing shade. So thinking ahead, looking at the big picture of everything you're doing, and then, so all that's in place, maybe the agency isn't a right fit. Maybe they're not doing what they say they're going to do. Whether it's cost, whether it's strategy, you should know enough about what services they're providing you to understand if they're actually doing it or not. And I've seen this a lot of times, and I don't like crapping on other agencies or anybody for that matter. Everybody has a reason, but I have seen a lot. I had a couple of specific clients I feel terrible for that were spending a lot of money with an agency. They locked themselves in a 2-year contract. That agency came out the gate firing on all cylinders, gave them a sick website. They did all this work for them. And then, the owner of the business got busy and they grew and life happens. And they said, you know what, these guys are good. They followed up for a few weeks. I'm good. I'm going to get away from this. They never got a digital marketing report. They never got anything. They couldn't get an email answered to them. As long as that credit card payment was going through, that agency was going to continue on. They may be even sending them these weird proprietary reports that really don't say anything, like, oh, here's your top 5 keywords. And 2 years goes by, and then when they're finally auditing the money that they're spending, and they're like, well, you know what, I haven't heard from these guys, and really we're not getting that much work. Like, most of my work came from a plumber buddy of mine or a real estate agent of mine, and it turns out this agency was not only not doing anything for SEO, they weren't doing anything at all. Whether that's they had employees and they lost people, or you might have hired a one-man show and they just really can't keep up with their workflow. It happens a lot. So if you're still not hitting those things after 3 months of paying for an agency or in-house team, it's time to start right away looking into this. Now, you're not going to be completely on top in 3 months. That's just not the way it goes. You may be in certain areas. That's why the KPIs are on point and why they're important to make sure you're monitoring. But you should see some movement. You should see an increase of traffic. You should have at least a good track of calls coming in. And this agency, after 3 months, should really have an idea of what they're up against as far as your competition. All right. The other thing that we see a lot is your in-house team is just not performing, or they're completely inept. I know having guys in an office while you're out in the field, when the cat's away, the mice will play. So, that does happen, right? So again, it all goes back to educating yourself and having KPIs in place, having goals in place that are incremental to make sure that not only are you monitoring and you're holding them accountable, but that stuff should be prominently displayed if you have an in-house team right up there. Just like you would in a sales company, right? Here's how many calls we had come in. Here's how many mold jobs, water jobs. Here's how many we have to hit our goals. Now, from a digital marketing perspective, there's only so much you can control, but an in-house team can do a lot, right? Because you're paying a salary. So if you are hiring a digital marketing agency and they're just doing SEO, pay-per-click, and Google My Business Management, and then they see, hey, well, you really should be emailing people. You can get more reviews. We can reactivate lists of past clients to get referrals. You're going to be paying for that email marketing service, whereas an in-house team may be motivated a little bit more by that board when you kind of give them carte blanche. Hey, you got to do what you got to do to get me leads, but I want to know what you're doing. So then they can implement email marketing. They can start texting. They can start following up on leads a little bit more to help hit those goals. All right. But again, this all boils down to educating yourself and making sure that you have your fingers on the pulse of what is happening with your company when it comes to digital marketing. Now, if you've been present and you're doing all this, you will avoid those common excuses that we see. Well, you're not spending enough money on pay-per-click. What do you mean? We just met last week. We've apparently optimized our campaigns. We have the placement. What do you mean we're not spending enough? Then you start looking into it and you're like, well, you know what? These guys let these campaigns lapse, or you don't have the right stuff, or you really haven't even gotten anything done. The other excuse that you see is we need more time. Your competition is really strong. And so if you've seen no movement, or something just feels off, trust your gut. Sometimes those two excuses are the biggest red flags ever. But again, if you are on point and you're present and you treat this as a partnership, you will know within 10 minutes if this company knows what they're doing or not. All right. It's about consistency. The other thing that could be affecting all this is your sales process. Okay. If you're a one-man show, I understand, not answering your phone all the time, maybe taking a little long to respond. That is not an excuse. I'm sorry. While I understand that happens, that is your bread and butter, is people calling you with property damage. And unfortunately, you have a lot of competition. So if you're not answering your phone and you're not responding and you don't have a good voicemail that says, we're going to call you right back, and you're not doing so, I don't care what's going on, unless you have a complete family emergency, then you need to offload that work somewhere else. There are too many services out there to automate that kind of stuff to have any excuse as to why you're not answering the phone and you're not following up with people. And again, something in your control, and I said this in another episode, is that if you don't have good customer service, then you could forget about all this stuff, right? So, this does take a lot of self-reflection on a company. Look in the mirror and see, how are my sales processes going? Do I have a good infrastructure to follow up on leads? Then the next step should be, am I holding my marketing agency accountable? Am I the problem? Am I bouncing around? Am I not giving them enough time? And am I not spending enough money? Sometimes that's the case, but most of the time it's